Never stop reading the Bible. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the biblical text of Psalms 6 through 10. But you know, we aren't just looking at some dusty ancient poetry here. We're actually exploring a super vivid, intense, and, quite frankly, deeply emotional spectrum of the human soul's journey. But right off the bat, ask yourself, how do you actually handle overwhelming guilt? Or what about unjust accusations? Like when deep emotional pain just hits you out of nowhere. How do you process that? I really want to set the stage here, because today we're looking at King David's incredibly visceral, relatable experiences, and we're going to see the human heart laid completely bare. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, Repentance and Mercy, looking at Psalm 6. Here we see David using this powerful metaphor, describing a soul that's been rendered totally powerless by personal sin and divine discipline. He's feeling the full weight of physical and spiritual exhaustion, basically pleading for deliverance based purely on God's loving kindness.
Actually, a quick fact here, Psalm 6 is one of the famous 7 penitential psalms. So it marks this profound, historical cry of deep repentance. It is just an incredibly raw confession of sin and sorrow.
And you can really see David's heart progress in 2 distinct steps. Step 1 is total sorrow and confession. I mean, the guy is literally weeping over his near-death frailty. But then, and this is key, there's this crucial pivot to step 2. Suddenly, his despair transforms into a rock-solid anchoring hope in God's unfailing mercy. He just knows his cries have been heard. Moving right along to section 2, the righteous judge. So in Psalm 7, we get a dramatic shift in context. David isn't dealing with internal guilt anymore. Now, he's dealing with external threats. He's actively fleeing from Saul, facing these severe false accusations and malicious slander from his enemies. He's crying out, declaring his absolute innocence in a deeply unfair situation.
And this brilliantly illustrates how he handles it. When faced with these attacks, David completely restrains himself from seeking violent revenge. No way. Instead, he confidently surrenders his innocence to a God who acts as the righteous judge of the whole world. He just trusts that the wicked are ultimately going to fall into their own traps.
All right, section 3, the mystery of creation. With Psalm 8, we zoom way out to the macro level. We shift completely away from personal attacks and enemies, and instead we just look up at the breathtaking cosmic mystery of creation.
And there's this incredible contrast. David looks at God's vast cosmic glory in the universe and immediately recognizes just how small and frail humanity is by comparison. But, and I love this, he doesn't stop at feeling insignificant. Instead, he's filled with absolute awe and gratitude because God chose to crown humanity with glory, making us the actual protagonist of history and placing creation right under our care.
Which brings us to section 4, Thanksgiving and Lament. Our final pairing, Psalms 9 and 10. Now, they might seem pretty different at first glance, but structurally and expressively, these two are deeply intertwined. Yet, they present 2 wildly contrasting realities of faith. It's a stark contrast for sure. Psalm 9 attributes all these glorious past and future victories entirely to God. It's this triumphant song of thanksgiving. But then, Psalm 10 agonizes over a totally absurd reality where God's justice seems to be trampled and the righteous are just suffering. Yet, what's so fascinating is that both Psalms ultimately land in the exact same place, an absolute trust in divine intervention. So wrapping up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought, with insights coming from the Center Studio. Can we trust God's justice in both our greatest victories and our darkest laments? David's incredible journey shows us that whether we're powerless with guilt, running from enemies, staring up at the stars, or weeping over life's absurd injustices, we can rely on divine justice across the entire spectrum of human experience.